Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Hello, listeners, and welcome. I am your host, Bryan O'Rourke. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. It is October now, and we actually had some cool weather on the Gulf South, Louisiana and the New Orleans area, which was really nice. I hope you're enjoying some pleasant weather as things hopefully continue to improve with the coronavirus situation in the industry around the world. You might also find interesting some of my upcoming articles, one on augmented and virtual reality, which will be posted shortly. Check that out on the technology front. Today, we're very fortunate to have back Emma Berry, who we did a podcast with months ago. And today we're going to talk about boutiques and technology and some trends around that. Of course, for those of you who know Emma, it goes without saying, but I'll mention her background. Of course, it's at Les Mills, her work with brands like Equinox and others around the world, and more recently, her role as Chief Creative Soul for Good Soul Hunting, which helps brands recruit talent. So today, Emma and I are going to have a great chat about these trends in boutiques and technology in general. Please look in the show notes for our upcoming webinar, free, where you can register right away, because it's October 20th on Tuesday, our expert series. So Emma will be joining me live on video. So I hope that you'll be able to join us there. So without further ado, let's welcome Emma Berry. Well, listeners, as I told you in the intro, I've known this lady for quite a while. Of course, she was only 10 when I met her, because much younger than I am now. Don't take that the wrong way. Of course, as I mentioned, her recent Good Soul Hunting launch, which is fantastic. And of course, her book, Building a Badass Boutique, but many other engagements with global brands as I went into. Emma, I'm so glad to have you spend time with us here again for our listeners. Thanks for joining.
Oh, look, there's nothing I would rather do on a Friday afternoon, Bryan. This is awesome.
I'm sure there are a few things you'd like to do, but thank you for doing that. With all the, I would say craziness, but, we've talked about technology. You've been in part of the boutique and other, with your background in the fitness business, even broader than that, for many years. And, we always talked about, transformation, and we didn't see this coming, did we?
No, we didn't. And, there's been a lot of analogies, whether it's 2 or 3 years that we've leapt ahead in 2 or 3 months, I'm not sure, but that's definitely happened, and it's forced adoption and it's forced new behaviours. And at the same time, we've been, held in place at home and sort of forced to pay attention. So look, it's definitely brought on a conversation that you and I have been banging on about for, I don't know, probably decades. Yeah. But it's really forced that, but right across the spectrum, not just our industry. We're hyper-focused in our industry, of course, but it's really changing the macro and the mega trends as well, for sure.
Yeah, but it still doesn't, in your book, Building a Badass Boutique, and in your other articles and talks, there's still principles. I mean, obviously, COVID will pass. Hopefully that will be dealt with in the next year. But in the interim, we're still seeing those kind of mega trends happening. So one of them that we've talked about before are things like gamification, whether it's the My Zone thing, I got mine.
Yeah, good on you. You don't have it on, I see, though. You're just...
No, but I'll get out there right after we talk, I promise, and wear it. And in boutiques, in the idea of gamification, talk about that if you don't mind.
Yes, gamification, the way I think about that is I just look at how addictive, what happened in gaming? What happened with all the 12-year-old boys around the world? And I always think about that, because I've never seen such a highly engaged group. And then you realize it's about interaction and it's about socialization, but just in a different medium, if you like. So when you look at boutiques, because they're hyper-personalized and because they were actually able to build generally, and I'm generalizing here, a tech platform from end to end. Like they wanted to book online, they broke all the rules that a big club had. You could book there, you could pay there, you could do all the things there. Maybe it could start, personalizing the marketing that came at you and such things. They're the ones that brought in, leaderboards and all the ways, shout outs and all the ways that I can be nudged during the day. They're the ones that extended the experience beyond the class to before it, to after it, to all day long, but also because they knew they had the data that could back up what a person, how often they came, who they sat next to, when they last came, when they were booked, when their pack was going to run out. So there's all these data points that enabled them to have a longer conversation than just a 45 or a 60-minute class.
That's right. And even when you see Apple, Fitness Plus announced with my watch I just showed you, and that gamification, you get your different challenges and your rewards, like with MyZone and all that reinforcement to release the endorphins or the dopamine, feeling like you accomplished something. It's a behavioral modification driver, as you're saying, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and you did such a great post on Apple, and, this is just the beginning. I mean, anyone who thinks, because it wasn't with much fanfare, they just kind of slipped it in there and said, oh, we're kind of doing this. A world of change is coming, as you and I know, because, they've been tracking, they've been listening and looking and learning from data for decades and pretty much working with all the collaborators, all the fitness, content creators around the world at every level, from tech to content to whatever, to marketing, to everything. And so, that comes with huge optics on where we're going and what we're going to need. And, I'm sure the people at Apple know exactly what I'm going to need in 40 years' time. I don't even know what I'm having for dinner. So that they've got you all mapped out. So you've kind of got that. And then, of course, they are having the bigger conversation. And, and my comment to you in that post was that they validated fitness, and we haven't been able to do that on our own. We've been this weird little slither over here of all the buff, bodybuilders or whatever, where they have really been pulling it down into those simple behavioral terms. Standing up and moving, breathing, just closing your rings, moving enough that you're moving for the appropriate amount of a human being. So they've brought it down to the basic level. And of course, you look at it and it seems oversimplified and you're like, what are they doing? It's so boring and it's not moving fast enough. But as you know, we sit on belief systems, we sit on behaviors. And those are those smallest pieces. You talk to Dr. John Berardi at Precision, same thing, Precision Nutrition. It's the small things that give the big change. It's not the big change that I want tomorrow, because you fail at that and then you're down in the gutter again the following week. So, yeah, absolutely. It's behavioral change, and it's when you need it at the dosage that you need it. In fact, the most effective behavioral change is when you barely discern it. Right. If you're getting up and say, I've got to get up at 5 a.m, I've got to do 2 hours of that and 3 hours of that, and I've got to eat that, and you can never eat that, good luck.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And then you've also working, in the spaces you have this, now everyone rushed into omnichannel content distribution, live and pre-recorded, when it was emerging, but all of a sudden, boom, everyone's doing it in tech now. And what are you seeing in that world, with what's going on there?
Well, look, we're seeing everything. So we're seeing everything from, there's very few people that are denying that technology has a place in the future. So that's the first thing, is that it's forced adoption. And then it's kind of proliferated. So there's a budget, there's a membership that you're serving, there's a how innovative is your team conversation, there's a, how big are your goals, how many markets are you across, all of those things. And so what I'm finding is that people are finding they're beginning to settle in the right solution for them. So most people, and when I talk to, if I look at most boutiques, most of them pivoted within a 2-week period, because they quickly worked out the doors weren't opening, and they had a very engaged membership who were used to coming like maybe 2 or 3 times a week and were addicted positively to their experience. And they had all their numbers, and they knew what they wanted and where they were. So they were able, whether it was Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, however they were doing it, or maybe, some of them were pushing it through an app if they were sort of a little bit more advanced in that conversation. So there's sort of that end of it. You've seen an absolutely triple-digit growth in, your big professionals, your Les Mills On Demands, your Varus, of course, by Equinox, powered by Equinox and all their brands. They sort of launched, sort of at about the right time, although their bike was too late. So, it was sort of interesting just to see that. Then you'd have people who say, I don't want the big brand. I just want Johnny from 5 o'clock on Monday. So there was definitely that familiarity and that community that came through. And by the way, I don't care that the music's shit and it's in Johnny's garage and that he cut out twice. Like there was a lot of sympathy around that. Like people were actually okay about that. And there's a big lesson in that as we move forward. Yes, content is king, but I think authenticity is something that's really shining through, whether that's the purpose, if we go back to business basics, whether is your company good? Do you know what I mean? I think that's coming through. And then do I like that person? And then, as you know, data is brutal. So we're going to learn some stuff through, you know, who's the most popular instructor? How long do I stay watching this thing before I get bored? Look at the drop-off that happened, Bryan. Week 1, everyone and their dog was online. Week 2, not so many. Week 4, I'm in the fridge, you know, like pretty much. So the same attrition that we enjoy in real life, we enjoyed online because we're still humans. We've still got those same behaviours. We're good for 2 minutes and then we're squirrel over here, you know?
That's right. And then you progress into apps on top of that. Some of these apps distribute some of this content. Other apps are more inclusive in what they deliver. You know, you can see the Noom product and what that does in weight loss, and it's 50 million users in the United States now. Or you see, you know, Equinox's app or other apps from brands, and including all these variations of service. And that is, you know, a lot of brands, they say, hey, I have an app, but that app isn't necessarily very functional. Do you see in the boutiques and abroad, do you see like a separation of app delivery between the people that really are creating a cooler experience for their member versus ones that are just kind of putting something out there to say they have it? I mean, what do you think about apps?
Yeah, again, you're seeing all sorts, aren't you? You're seeing people who barely understand digital and they're sort of, you know, in the headlights, you know, going, what on earth do I do? So you've got a lot of people asking, what should I do and how do I go about it? And then you just, you know, I've been going through this process a lot with clients, and it's like, well, first of all, why are you doing it and who you're doing it for? Like, you've got to start right at that thing, because as you know, you can put an app out and you'll get 0 people. You know, it's not about that. It's about what community are you serving? And then, to be honest, what's the marketing message? How are you going to get that message out to people so that they're going to adopt? And you actually have to, if it's going to be anywhere near professional, like even the technology side, let alone the content side, let alone the music licensing side, it's a production. It's a whole other business. And, you know, I've obviously been in a lot of panels around this, and there are going to be massive winners. I mean, what is it, 100 million or whatever that Peloton's spending right now and whatever they're doing? And so you got some of those big players. Now they know they've got to pour millions and billions of dollars on for market share, right? And a lot of them went free. When COVID hit, a lot of them went free, which is always a risk, because you get to that 30, 60, 90 day, who's still paying, you know, who's still getting their credit card paying. So they're not even true stats, because that's like the boutique when they first hit, everyone would go around and do the free class, you know, but no one would stick and convert to a member. It's the same thing online. So you're sort of seeing that those big guys are doing that. The big brands will have to have a quality conversation. They're going to need to find a way, either through partnership, they could do it through third party, they could do it themselves, or they could do a blend of both. But they have to know their customer. They have to know, am I going to be international? Am I just doing my customer? Would I do a digital only? You know, I've got a mixed revenue model there where perhaps I tier it and everyone gets digital, but then they unlock other content, or they unlock other experiences, or they get, you know, whatever. And then you've got live, virtual, which is, you know, basically filmed in club. And then you've got on demand, whenever I want. And if you think about the brilliance of Peloton, it's another thing I don't hear talked about that much, but they kind of nailed it all. They do a live class, which you could stream in. We have seen it in hotels as a virtual experience. And then it can be on demand in my own home. So they've kind of crossed that whole chasm. You know, everyone's tying themselves in knots over that. They've kind of delivered the whole damn thing, which is kind of interesting. And then you've got people who are just saying, you know what, we just need to do it pretty cheap. And our members are okay with that, because our brand is, I want to be with Emma, I want to be with Bryan, I want the 45-minute. And you see some people just doing a lovely yoga, you know, with a nice little backdrop or whatever, and they've worked out how to, you know, you'll see Zoom and all those guys are innovating like crazy to solve all the solutions, because everyone wants to hold this content generating thing that everyone's going to put a payment gateway on, right? So they're all trying to, you know, get in there and hold on to it. So it really depends on who you're serving for. But when you talk about omnichannel, in my mind, the definition is truly integrated, because you can have a digital experience and you can have a live experience and they can have nothing to do with each other. That is not omnichannel to me. To me, that's two things that really you're not going to get the you're not going to get the greater whole, in the end.
Yeah.
So, it needs to know that you did a core class last night, that you shouldn't be doing weight training today, that you're a little bit overtrained. Like in the end, and we know Apple's going there, in the end, you're going to wake up. It's going to say, these are your vitals. This is what you should do today. And by the way, I've just told the fridge that you should order that food. I mean, we know, my head was exploding at CES as I was looking at the house, the smart houses where you just have to, you probably just sit there and exist and just think things and everything else kind of happens. So
yeah, but your smart house, Emma, though, it'll bring you a glass of wine when you need one of these.
Oh my God. I need help with that. Like seriously.
Yeah, but it's this whole integrated experience, right? And you're right. It's really because you have to think of it as a business strategy. It's just the technology tool. It's not the thing. It's a tool. It's not the end game, right?
Yeah, and also when you get into content creation, that train does not stop. It's exhausting. And so most of the brands that are sort of middle or higher and having to do a really good job, it's a separate team, it's a tech team, it's a producer, it's possibly different talent that's tested really well and got good Q rating. It's a whole production.
Yeah, you'd know that because of your background, obviously.
Yeah. And then a great live example is Forte. I mean, of course, they're, Lauren and the team are just absolutely going gangbusters, because if you want to bring in a live experience in an automated way, which is relatively what Peloton does, they don't have a million cameras running around the studio, they're fixed. And Lauren does the same thing. So I think there are ways around it. But interesting on that, people who track that data live versus on demand is just a fraction. So it's somewhere between, it depends on who you're listening to, but somewhere between 15 and 20% is only the live, because it comes down to convenience.
Convenience.
Convenience, yeah.
On demand. And talk about then also in the idea of this now is automation. So, automating certain functionality so that when you complete the class or when you have an engagement, you're getting a notification, or you're being asked your view, or automating knowing that I'm only going to serve up classes that are going to appeal to you because I know who you are, or providing offers to you that are going to be personalized to you and making that automated. How much is that part of? I know there aren't a lot of brands that are doing that very well, but what do you see in the landscape there?
Yeah, and again, it seems to have been some of either the very forward-thinking guys, although even they've been trapped, as you know, a lot of people have been doing their digital transformation because they were stuck in the old manual days of having a lot of front desk and a lot of this and that, huge, attrition in membership and stuff like that. And the boutiques came along, and because they're managing a smaller crowd and typically a smaller number of things, it was easier to integrate. And they had to work out, how can we open just for a set number of hours, give this high quality experience, charge a lot of money, but there's going to be big overheads. You've got to pay the instructors more. You've still got costs, and real estate's bonkers because you're probably downtown somewhere. So, all of that's changing. Every one of those variables is changing in terms of the economics. But so they built a very beautiful, and it was all based on, a wonderful retail experience, So everything you can think of can relatively be automated. What if we created a world that was so enticing online that people would book online? Great. There's that part. And pay. So you're never, and there's something psychological about that. You're not in a boutique physically parting with money. You're actually in there having an experience. So when you're separated from that, it's quite a wonderful thing. So there's that. And then you have the class, and then you probably rate the class. And then, you probably got, some service afterwards. You might have bought a shake before or after the class, whatever. So these are little add-ons that have started coming in. And then after that, they know that you were in that class. You either showed or you didn't. If you didn't, you got one notification. If you did, you got another notification. Great to see you. You've got 2 more things on your pack. How about you up? We've got a special, whatever. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Here's another class you might like, whatever. So they do that. And if you follow all the boutique guys, I'm usually hit up at least 5 times a day by the good brands. Like they'll just be nudging you all day long. Hey, here's our star thing over in town, and here's another thing, and remember to do this. So, they're really in that. They all jump on the Mother's Day, Father's Day. The whole social calendar is absolutely their equity. Then when I work with the middle clubs and sort of the big box clubs, bigger ship and lots of complexity, and a lot of them have, a lot of their BI systems, they've got like 1 million systems that aren't necessarily talking to each other, and, and it's exhausting. And then you've got a whole lot of members that haven't migrated to similar systems, and the adoption's all over the place. So it's taken a moment like this for everyone to be flattened. And then it's kind of like, right, if we're going to build back, we can sort of build back on our terms because we've actually now got these restrictions we've got to deliver to. So it's a fantastic excuse to say you've now got to book your experience, which then allows you to track. You've got to, people haven't really been thinking about that, but it's funny, I'm just thinking of some of that research. I'm sure you saw it from MXM, from Blair McCaney, and he said, around love, what are people loving about this experience? And he said they love space. I go to the gym and it's not crowded anymore. I love clean air. I'm loving the outdoors. I was forced outside again, I'm loving virtual fitness, okay? And then I'm actually loving booking my experience, which I never thought I'd do. I knew that people would love that, but they don't like being pushed through change. So, automation, so there's all of that, and then you've got all the back end. And then, of course, the sharp end of that, as is AI, and there's that great example that Keep Me gives, that Ian from Keep Me gives, which is of 45 data points, there's something like 8.8 million decision trees or whatever that can basically predict whether you, Bryan, who are in the club in February, will still be there in December next year, to 95% accuracy. So, you look at that and you're like, wow, we're not even at the game, let alone in the game.
And that takes it's a lot of time to replicate in the world. So, you can once you get the data sets in place, you have to collect that data for a while, and that data has to learn for a while and you have to have enough scale for a while to reach that point, which is part of the digital transformation kind of conundrum for many brands, because if you're a legacy brand, to undo all the siloed systems you refer to launch a new siloed system. And it's not just about the system, it's designing, to your point, the membership experience you're trying to create, and then run that for a period of time where you have to pivot around it long enough. The legacy operators have a great disadvantage to new competitors who aren't.
It's so hard. I mean, and look how many have gone out of business. I mean, and you also had the big trends happening as well, let alone the fact, but that part of that was driven to the fact they couldn't hyper-personalize. You couldn't make it a special experience, right? Because I do believe it's going to go back to variety, right, or somewhat, or the few things that I like, but on different terms. To me, the next phase is going to be a smashing together of what have we learned from boutique, what do we love about club but you could just never execute on, and what's next, because there hasn't been a lot of content evolution and innovation, I would say, in this time. It's all been around delivery mechanism and being in different places and, and those sorts of things. And also from a work perspective, it's pushed us into, not being in the big buildings downtown, and, it's just changed everything. And we're only at the beginning of understanding that.
Yeah, and to your point as well, the notion of pretty much one-way delivery of content versus back and forth content experience where you see a little bit of this in Apple's Fitness Plus product, where at least you can watch your wearable feedback from your Apple on display on the device, but then you will see avatars or other tools that will start delivering feedback in at the moment in that space, because that becomes a more contextualized digital experience. So I think we'll see that and other things like that, and not too far from now. So the whole idea of streaming live or content in a singular sense, I think, is going to kind of change, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we're definitely seeing, where social meets the experience. I mean, everyone said Peloton will never work, it's too expensive, and you'll never create a community online. Yeah. And they're not happy now. Well,
I still book the fact that Peloton is a short on the stock, everybody. The marketplace doesn't have too many competitors, and their price is very overvalued. Nothing against what they're doing, I think they're great, but I think the onrush of people delivering product that's similar is going to be just tremendous. But we'll see. Kudos to them though. So
absolutely.
A few other questions. Strength training. Boutique's been more of a group type experience, and you have strength as part of that. But as far as I see guys like Luke Carlson with Discover Strength, some other boutiques. I think there have been a number of in Europe that are small studio type, that are strength train only, automated type of delivery systems. What are your thoughts about, I guess the marketplace and what Studio Boutique is definition, there are all these micro segments, I guess, that fit under that umbrella. What is your idea or your thoughts on, boutique strength, be it even EMS and what's going on with that, right?
Yeah, and that's been such a big conversation, I guess, in Germany or in Europe. It's only just trickling here, and it hasn't really set fire yet. And, it has challenges. I believe in it. I mean, gosh, I got the 20 minutes of my life and I couldn't move the next day. It was hilarious at the last FIBO, so that was pretty funny. But look, strength training, and again, I think COVID has really highlighted this. I mean, there's been a couple of things. First of all, health's never been at the front conversation as it has now. Like, just pure health, like, am I healthy? Am I of a healthy weight? Am I vibrant? Am I fit and well? Not that have I got a six pack and have I got 2% body fat? Not that. In fact, that wouldn't be health. But, just, do I function as a human being? Have I got good immune system? Am I vibrant in life? Like that kind of health. And I think there's two things. One is obviously heart health. So cardio, we have to be, we've got to be able to get around and do it in a fairly efficient way. Secondly, strength. When I talk to everyone who can't get back to the gym, it is the pull-up bars and it is the squat racks and it's the kettlebells that everyone wants to get back to, because, and that's what we lose as we get older. I mean, yes, most people walk, we lose our structure. Right. We lose the strength of our bones. We lose the strength of our body being held by good solid muscle. It doesn't have to be big or anything, just functional muscle, And then, of course, it helps us with metabolism. So these are real things. Now, in the boutique space, it's funny. I mean, Carrie, we both know Carrie, but, when I look at Style Studio, their strength boutique, they've got 4 boutiques under one roof, is maxing out. Like, that is the one that not one class, it drops one spot. So it is strength that is leading, cycling and aerobics and, all the things. So I think that's fascinating. When I was in Brazil, tonus, there was a wonderful where you literally squat rack, and you've got a whole bunch of things you can do off that. But I loved that concept. Yeah. When I look at, speak to the guys at Escape Fitness and all the equipment guys, they are now, of course, in production of home pods where I have, can I squat, can I bench, can I chin up, and then you've got the resurgence of CrossFit. Now, it's early days, obviously it's under new leadership, but this in many ways is a boutique. It doesn't have the high-end service. It's much more sort of sawdust and, grime, that kind of approach. But when you think about it, they do one thing, they have one community, they do something well. That could easily come back. And of course, they're very strong in the strength category as well. So there's a number of things going there. The other thing that's interesting is when you look at your F45s and, big brands like that, Orange, they've actually had to change their programming because you used to do all this changing, can't do it now. You don't have cleaning time. So they've actually had to do in place, which is going to mean it's becoming your own little weightlifting gym. Right. So I think there's a lot of things going in that direction. And then as well as that, and I know it's one of your questions as well, but personal training. Right. Most of the personal training, I talk a lot to the businesses and the teams and stuff, and a lot of them didn't suffer at all during these times because they were very easy able to pivot on. Some might have gone to 70% of rev or whatever. Some might have just run a bit of a charity because if their clients lost their jobs, some of them were doing a bit of a sliding scale in terms of payment. A lot of them are at 120%, like they've done really well because people are like, shit, I've got to get fit. And by the way, this is a safe way to do it. Right. I can get the best advice for me. Small group training's had a resurgence because all of a sudden, I don't want to be alone, or perhaps we can't afford it. Well, I'd rather pay $30 rather than 100, whatever. And all of these things have been driving personal training, and that's also very related to strength because most personal trainers are going to base, somewhat of their periodization around strength training because that really makes sense and they know the value of it. So look, it's a very big category. When I look at my parents' age group, the older age groups and stuff like that, oh my goodness, they're all great at walking, but you see their posture going. What do they really need is they need some strength and they need some yoga. You know what I mean? Like just to keep the body open, keep it strong, to go with all the walking and what have you in terms of the cardio choices they make.
Yeah, exactly. Alloy, Rick Mayo's group out of Alpharetta in the Atlanta area, they hardly missed a beat with this, because of the same things you're talking about. So you're so right. So one last kind of subject, and thank you again for being here. I use the term boomerlennial. So the notion of of age. We did a piece on the science of aging, health coach. In line with what you're just talking about. Boutiques, especially with COVID now, because in talking with operators around the world, what we see is there's a reluctance upon people who are a little shift older, 50 and older, more educated, to return to the gym right now. That tends to skew that way for the time being because of concerns about COVID. But more than that, the definitions we use at boutiques or studios are just for millennials. When we've seen this age downshift, people in their 50s and 60s and even 70s, they don't see themselves as elderly. The technology adoption rates amongst those populations are very much, the gap is closing between Gen Z and millennial adoption versus people who are boomers. This is a subject that has been talked about for many, many, many years. You see some of the stats even put out by Les Mills that 80% of the global gym population is millennial. But boomers control 12 times the amount of worth as compared to the millennial counterparts, and they they're just as ready to consume CBD to find luxury spa and yoga experiences, to like all the things that you might tout for millennials. Tell me about your thinking about boom millennial. Do we need to be defining studio spaces just for the young?
No, not at all. And I don't think we should ever define a space by age anyway. And I think it's probably illegal in these days. I don't know what we're allowed to talk about anymore, Bryan. We have to cancel this podcast. I've had to really click.
We haven't started.
Look, what do I think about it? I mean, boomers, if you look at boutiques, they really were built by millennials for millennials, and they just happen to be the early adopters. So, and look, it's such a weird little term. It doesn't matter what definition I put to it. I can always break the rules. It's basically small, focused, high. You're paying a lot of money. It's pay as you go, and there's high service. But I can break every rule. There are enormous boutique studios like One Rebel in London. I don't know if it's still there, but enormous, 86 bikes.
Right.
You've got things that do more than one thing, so it's not just specialised. You've got lower price, like more yoga in London, which was just going bonkers when I was there, but it's a much more affordable price. So whichever lever you pull, I can show you an example. But the basic premise is focus. It is a focused workout. Now, it happened to be the millennials that did it. They happened to have, discretionary money, and by that I mean mummy and daddy's discretionary money. So probably the boomers have been funding this anyway. So basically, that's my read on it. But look, it's not about age. And here's some things and I've long thought about this, and I actually was chatting with Bryce Hastings about it at some point. Maybe we should pick up that conversation. But it's a huge necessity. You've got time, you've got means, and you've got things like insurance companies saying, how fit are you? And can you wear this watch and prove it? And then we'll get your money down. Right. So they're into biometrics. And like if I do have an issue or a heart thing or whatever, it's interesting for me to know how to manage that. And so I think naturally, whether it's Apple Watch and all those wonderful examples that Tim Cook gave of literally life-saving, like my parents watch that. They worry about losing their mind. Yep. And they worry about falling over.
That's right.
That's it at this point, and they wonder who's still going to be here next year. Like that's about where they're at.
Yep.
And but if they could have this served to them, and that, hey guys, if you do this circuit 3 times a week, it's X minutes, whatever, it takes care of all your stuff, whatever. And by the way, you're going to get rewarded. And then you actually do it in a way that's rewarding for them. Right. Now, I had some ideas. I mean, they're very social. They're of the olden days where you actually spoke to real people. So, they couldn't wait to get back to their tea parties and their reunions and their, all of these things. That should be stitched in. Like there's a whole social component that we're missing. So that particular boutique would have a social element that had face-to-face. There might be a pre and post gathering area, for example. You might get together with Mayo Clinic and do what are the big bang 5 exercises that people generally need for their body to be functioning, and then bring it down to what's the minimum amount that you could do in a week to maintain. And I'm not doing that to make excuses. It's just we know how hard it is to get people who don't particularly want to go and live in a gym. But if I had to do a 20-minute, and that's where EMS comes in, it's such a wonderful example. If I just had to do that a couple of times a week. That's 2 lots of 20 minutes. And I feel it in all the right places, so I don't feel like I've wasted my time. And then I have the rest of the day, I stimulate more of my muscle, and I get really activated in those ways. Yeah. And then I can go and have my social time. So there's a lot of headroom here, and I believe that's what's come out of this. I think big gyms are going to have to think about it because they predominantly have slightly older, some of the older demos, and so they're going to have to serve those people in a different way. So I have a lot of hope, and if not them, it's going to be the health companies, and if not them, it's going to be Apple, and if it's not them, it's going to be a corporate solution. Corporate is going gangbusters right now. Like, a lot of people are just coming out of gyms and going, oh, and not only that, maybe 50% of our work staff doesn't go back to work. So it's not even, what does the benefits package look like now? It's got to be partially digital, or it's got to be partially at home. So, there's just so many moving things, but digital has such a big part as the delivery mechanism of those experiences, and also the streamlining of them.
Yes, and you're right. Apple, by the way, their play isn't fitness. Fitness is part of their bigger play, which is health. Yeah, it's really their play, and that they're doing. They say it. I mean, they're not hiding it, right?
No. They say it, but they're only telling us a few things they're doing. But you think about them. Are they going to get into more hardware? Of course they are. That's where they make their money. Are they going to get people coming together for real? Of course they are. Yeah. You can't have an audience of 100 million or however many million people are going to get on, active on this platform and not do something with that.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what happened with Nike. You got to look at what happened. All those things. So expect the worst or the best. Expect the best. It's going to reach more people, and
it's going to be health, because the reality is that they can't keep their stock price up without attacking the last vestiges of mega markets, and those vestiges are health, education, and basically our food system. So these are the last huge marketplaces.
Last bastions.
So we'll all be working for them one day. But
that's funny and interesting that they're so close to the survival of humanity. Like, that, this is the funny thing. Like, I feel like I feel like Armageddon most days.
Well, have you seen the Galloway thing where he talks about Google is God? That's for your brain, right? Facebook is heart, because it's who you love and you're connected with. Amazon's your gut, because you got to consume fast and quick to survive. And Apple is your groins, because if I got an Apple Watch and an iPhone, you want to mate with me before someone with an Android.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. I haven't heard his analogy.
I'll post the link in the show notes.
I love it. Love that spot.
Well, Emma, it's always a pleasure. You're so kind to share time with our audience and your insights, and such a wonderful thought leader in your space and with all you're doing. And I look forward to spending time on screen with you October 20th, where we're going to talk about digital and boutiques. And you'll see the notes, friends, in the podcast. We'll be sending out a number of promotional pieces. So we'd love to have you see Emma live.
Very excited for that.
It's going to be awesome. Emma, thank you so much on a Friday afternoon to spend time.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hello, listeners. This is Bryan O'Rourke, and thanks so much for listening to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. The podcast is made possible by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, a consortium of global brands working together to enhance the adoption of technologies in the fitness space. Our company, Videri Ventures, which is invested in Vertimax, Montezuma, Gold's Gym, Houston, Texas, and Fitness 24/7 Thailand, also underwrites the podcast, along with our service companies, Integris Advisors, Moon Mission Media, and others. Please feel free to share this podcast with your colleagues. And if I can be of any assistance to you, don't hesitate to reach out, bryanko'rourke@gmail.com, or find me on any of the major social networks. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.